Good morning. I am Mary Jean Taylor, and I welcome you to our North Chapel virtual Sunday service, where I hold you close in head and heart. We are now 2 weeks into November as we gather on this 15th day of the month. And for me, this time has been marked by feelings of ridiculous anxiety, then despair, and eventually cautious but real hope. I find myself firmly believing that it is 11 p.m. and time for bed when the clock only reads 6 p.m. each evening. And as the dark and cold begin to close in, I do worry a bit about the long winter ahead. Does any of this sound familiar to you? But there is always light. And while I am striving to recognize and embrace the traditional feeling of November, that of gratitude, I do know if I can get there, it will help me to stay centered and hopeful. Wishing the same to be true for you. An important reminder that our annual pledge drive is in full swing, and your financial support is more important than ever during these strange times. Our Board of Trustees has asked that we try to increase our pledge by 10% this year. Can you make that happen? I'm going to look at my retiree budget and see what I can do. I hope you will too. As always, you can find good info and announcements at our website, the3ws.nucs.org. And your loving support of our North Chapel is appreciated as ever. You hold our church up, just like the church holds each of us up. Lastly, a reminder from Mary Oliver to find our joy, our center, our hope, no matter the season, no matter what. Invitation. Oh, do you have time to linger for just a little while out of your busy and very important day for the goldfinches that have gathered in a field of thistles for a musical battle to see who can sing the highest note or the lowest or the most expressive of mirth or the most tender? Their strong, blunt beaks drink the air as they strive melodiously, not for your sake and not for mine and not for the sake of winning, but for the sheer delight and gratitude. Believe us, they say, it is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in this broken world. I beg of you, do not walk by without pausing to attend to this rather ridiculous performance. It could mean something. It could mean everything. It could be what Rilke meant when he wrote, "You must change your life." Thank you for being here. Give Thanks is our opening hymn today.
My name is Laura Foley, and I'm speaking to you today from the woods of Pomfret, Vermont. And I wanted to read you a poem, which is a recent poem I wrote about how we can bring into our lives that which we find in stillness. How can we do that, and how can we change our lives for the better? The poem is called The Door. My singing teacher tells me God is what happens when you leave the walls of your life. I think about this on a hilltop far from the house, a warm sunny day in late autumn. The kind of warmth that you know will soon be rare. Soon winter will cover the ground. I'm wondering if I can hold inside myself the godness I find today. Carry it down through the woods to the opening of our grassy yard and in through the red painted door.
Good morning, I'm Diane Mellinger, and I'm the music director at the North Chapel. Here is the church, here is the steeple. Open the doors and welcome the people. Ring out the bells, lift up your voice. These are the numbers in which we rejoice. Number of various participants in choir during my tenure. Number of choir arrangements in our music library. Number of pipes in the 145-year-old Tracker organ. Number of hours the choir sings together each year. Number of Sunday services I've played in my 22 years at the North Chapel. And finally, the percentage by which we are hoping you can increase your pledge. Thank you.
Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. It is very good to be with one another. For those of you who might be joining us for the first time, my name is Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley, and I'm honored to serve as minister at North Universalist Chapel Society, or at North Chapel here in Woodstock, Vermont. Today is Sunday, November the 15th, and the title of this morning's reflection as we move towards this Thanksgiving holiday is Practicing Gratitude. How can we take first steps along the age-old and mysterious path of wisdom? And how do we navigate this wilderness that we're in? Now, despite how difficult it was, I am deeply grateful for this week in American political life. I'm grateful for our health and our continued well-being. I am present to those whose lives have been changed or lost due to the ravages of COVID-19 worldwide. May we hold one another, and may we see each other through in these challenging and unprecedented times. And since the presidential election began on Tuesday, November the 3rd, we've been in such a strange state of unrest. It's exhausting. We are, all of us, perhaps, somewhat tired of the news. Personally, I've been struggling to find the sacred in all of this, and it's such a challenge. The way I'm built, I tend to carry tension until I know that I can let it go. And then when I do, all of this grief pours out, grief that I was not aware I was carrying. I'm not always aware of what's going on inside of me. In some things, in matters of faith, I invest my heart so deeply that I don't always know how to survive my own disappointments. I give until I give out sometimes, and it's not healthy for me. I wonder how it is for President Trump. I wonder if he's like me in this way, giving all until the end, and maybe longer. Now, I'm saddened by some of the choices of the current administration, an administration broken by the losses in the popular vote in the Electoral College, broken by the loss of the presidency. How brave a thing it would be, how beautiful and how healthy for our country were he to meet this defeat in honor and bravely. I don't know if he can. As a man, I do not judge him. I see that he may not have the tools. How well would I do if I spent my lifetime walking a similar path as he? Selfishly, I'm glad I haven't had to do that. I'm grateful that I don't have to do that work. I'm thankful that I don't have to work that hard to reorder my life and the life of the nation in so short an amount of time. Now, what I've been frustrated by, the great weight that I've been carrying, gritting my teeth, has been about how much the President of the United States has been part of my daily life. I've thought about Donald Trump more than I've thought about Barack Obama, more than I've thought about John F. Kennedy, and even more than I've thought about Josiah Bartlett. Please tell Martin Sheen that I'm sorry, but it's true. West Wing fan that I am. Trying to find the realm of the spiritual when I'm so caught up and tied all up in my rage about the president's response to the coronavirus, about his sexual choices, his sexual behavior towards women, or his views on global warming, or why he's passionate about building walls and burning bridges and banning Muslims in a manner that breaks the heart that I give to God. Inshallah, my God, I carry so much grief. Still, I try to find the realm of the spiritual, and I always find it in gratitude. I struggle hard to get there, but I get there eventually. Well, I do my best. And when I do, I can look back on all of the things that troubled me, mindful of the wisdom of the ages. And I forget to do this sometimes. Fortunately, my go-to hero theologian, Alan Watts, keeps reminding me. He sits on my shoulder sometimes, droning and droning on the words of wisdom. He tells me about the wisdom of Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher. He says, the feeling of Lao Tzu is that the president or the emperor should have the lightest touch attitude, that he should simply help the people and retire and not claim any merits. Always withdraw himself, always behind the scenes, not striving for power, but simply to help things along. Govern a state, he said, as you would cook a small fish. Now, you don't when you cook a small fish in the frying pan, you don't keep tossing it about. You don't keep fidgeting with the spatula or things will fall apart. You have to do it gently. End quote. That's so far from the way things are right now, so far from the way things have been. And I can make my peace with that, but I have to do that through gratitude. By being grateful that things are unfolding as they are, we're learning something. That's difficult, and it's harder still when I believe that my bitterness and my rage will make things better. and they will not. Bitterness and rage are not among the many things that are asked of us right now. I think that we are being called to a higher place. I don't know if that is true, but I think that's where I end up through my practice of gratitude. The country's at odds with itself. The vote seems somewhat balanced, but it's still so beautiful if you know how to look for it. Let's make sure that what is lovely is not defiled. We can stop being so hard on ourselves and so hard on one another. We may have some real differences. We may have fundamental disagreements, but never in the history of our country has that not been the case. One of our challenges is that we stare at our own history through dirty glasses. We're not seeing clearly as we might. Had we lenses that were more capable of bringing things into more clear focus, we would see, if we tried, that we hold so much in common. We're so much alike, but it's so hard to see because we are alike in different ways. It's like this. Before the election, there were those who predicted that there would be a landslide presidential victory for the right. At the same time, there were those of us who predicted that there would be a landslide presidential victory for the left. Now, as it turns out, there was no landslide at all. Both sides were deluded. Somewhere along the way, we stopped talking to each other. It wasn't always this way. We used to work together a lot. We used to really care about how we got along. Compromise used to make life a little bit easier for everybody. We wandered away from that, and that's not doing us any good. Things are so sensitive now. Who can say what to whom and when? It's also political, and it's surreal. More heads of state around the world have circumvented the White House and reached out to President and Vice President-elect to offer their official congratulations. More heads of state from around the world than high-ranking American Republicans. We're fighting unhealthily right now, and we're not likely to survive this gracefully. We will have to see how this unfolds over time, but I am grateful. I am grateful to have and to hold my peace of mind. There's so much rejoicing at this time as well. Some of it bitterly triumphant, but most of it truly joyful. So many people are dancing in the streets. There's such a mix of joy and grief and tears and bursts of laughter. The good news seemed to dawn from coast to coast and around the world, and just less than half of us are at the joyful party. Just less than half of us are not filled with big D, democratic joy. What an incredible time, and what an incredible country this is. I'm so interested in all of us right now. It's strange. I have this memory from childhood that comes up when I think about us somehow, and I'd like to share it. I was in Mrs. Schroeder's art class in Pine Brook Middle School back in New Jersey. I had her art class right after Spanish with Mrs. Regalado. She was awesome. In her class, we learned this song. Uno enero, Uno enero, dos de febrero, tres de marzo, cuatro de abril, cinco de mayo, seis de junio, siete de julio, San Fermín. La 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 la. It was a really fun song. It was awesome, a song that celebrates a festival for the patron saint of Pamplona and the ritual running of the bulls. It's a countdown sort of a song. The first day of April, the second day of February, the third day of March, the fourth day of April, the fifth day of May, the sixth day of June, and the seventh day of July. That's when the festival is. And everybody turns out for it. It's not my thing, but I love the idea. It certainly sounds exciting, running with the bulls. I guess I'm more of a running with the yellow Labrador retrievers kind of a guy, but that's just me. Anyway, in Mrs. Schroeder's art class, we did this projection tracing project. She had this impressive machine. Well, it was impressive for 1977. But she had this machine that had bright lights and mirrors and a prism lens, like an old school overhead projector. That's basically what it was, but you didn't have to use transparencies. You could use any object at all, any object that would fit inside this machine and its chamber of light and mirrors. The machine would bounce the light on the object and then project its image on the wall so that you could trace it. It always came out perfectly. In Mrs. Schroeder's class, we were all artists. Mrs. Schroeder would carefully tape the art paper on the wall, and then each of the students, each in our turn, would trace the image that we brought to class. And then she would take it down and we'd spend the rest of the class filling in the tracing with color. Most of us brought in album covers. Albums were big at the time. I brought in the cover to Chicago's Greatest Hits, Color My World, and Saturday in the Park, and 25 or 6 to 4. I felt cool, but Barbara Mogilnicki was a little cooler than I was. I think it was Barbara Mogilnicki. It might not have been her, but her name is fun to say. In any case, whoever it was brought in an album by Fleetwood Mac. It was the one that didn't have any title. It just read Fleetwood Mac. In fact, this is my copy that I had back in 1977. This is it. I still have my copy from back in the day. I used to listen to music religiously, all kinds of music. And I liked the art project just fine. Chicago was a cool cover, but Fleetwood Mac, that was cooler. It's just how things were back then, and I remember it clearly even after 43 years. There's a song on that Fleetwood Mac album that is useful for us this morning. This is why I bring it up. Stevie Nicks wrote a song and sang it and gave it to us like a present. The song may be familiar to some of us, even though years have gone by. She sang, "I took my love and I took it down. I climbed a mountain and I turned around and I saw my reflection in the snow-covered hills until the landslide brought me down." She asked, "O mirror in the sky, what is love? Can the child within my heart rise above?" These are such good questions. Can the child within us rise to meet the challenges of our day? This song still resonates within me. I still ask myself its questions. Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? I don't know. It can be terrifying to come up against yourself like this. And as we do this, as we come up against ourselves in this crazy time of ours, let us do so in the practice of gratitude. Let's be thankful for the opportunities that we have to grow. My favorite part of the song was when the singer realizes that the bottom has dropped out in life, that something precious has been lost, that things cannot go on as they had gone on before. Things will be different. My favorite part of the song is when Stevie Nicks wrote and sang and finally admitted to herself confessionally, "Well, I've been afraid of changing because I've built my life around you." But time makes you bolder, and children get older, and I'm getting older too. Maybe this describes where we find ourselves right now, all of us, redfish and bluefish all the same. Maybe we are all afraid of changing. We, who thought there'd be a landslide for the left, and we who thought that there'd be a landslide for the right. Maybe we're all in need of a little grace. Sorrow happens, and growth is also possible. Change is possible, even if we're afraid of it sometimes. In fact, change is more than possible. It's the only constant in our lives. And what's the other adage? Change is inevitable, but growth is optional. That one scares me a little bit. We all might be a little fearful of change at times, but change is normal. Change is constant. Change is inevitable. It always happens, which means that growth is always possible. Growth is the healthy consequence of time. But you have to choose it. You have to choose growth, and you have to choose to value time. We have to make it so. We have to choose to grow. It does not happen on its own. And when we make this choice, we grow, even though it feels like the bottom is dropping out. Ever and always, it is possible to see the beauty of the world that is around us. All we have to do is open up our eyes in gratitude. The beautiful is everywhere around us. It's in the Bible. In Psalm 104, it is written, "Bless the Lord, my soul. O Lord, my God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendor and majesty, covering yourself with light as a garment, stretching out the heavens like a tent. He lays the beams of his chamber on the waters. He makes the clouds of his chariot. He rides the wings of the wind. He makes his messenger winds. He ministers a flaming fire." In this psalm, the holy is the beauty of the world, clothed in splendor and clothed in light and clothed in majesty. Deeper in the psalm, grace is clothed in water above the mountain, and here I hear the words of Stevie Nicks again. Stevie Nicks, who sees her reflection in the snow-covered hills, the water above the mountain. She who sees herself reflected in the beauty of the world. The name of the song by Fleetwood Mac that sings like a psalm is Landslide. It was written back in 1975. No matter who we were back then, no matter who we have become over the course of time, no matter how divided we think we are, no matter who we voted for or champion, we are all in the process of change and growth. And here's the challenge, amplified by this Thanksgiving season into which we are entering. How can we commit to change? How can we choose to grow with grace and with gratitude? How can we be thankful for and not just rancorous with one another in this time of transition? Where do we find commonality? Now, if I were still in Mrs. Schroeder's class, if it were still 1977, I would go ask Barbara Mogilnicki if we could trade posters for a while, if we could learn each other's music, and then see where things go from there. I wouldn't be afraid to do something like that, but of course it is not still 1975. Things are harder now. The challenges are bolder, and so are we. We might ask ourselves, have I been stuck in my ways? Have I been traveling only on my own far too well-worn path without wandering into the wilderness, into the mystery, into my own unknown? We can ask ourselves if we've been afraid of changing, having built our lives around a set of hardened ideas, some of which we cleave to, and some of which we do not. What can we change about ourselves, all of us? And to what degree are we able to take down our defenses? Taking Down the Defenses is a book of essays that was written by a man named Arthur Foote back in 1972, 2 years before Stevie Nicks wrote Landslide. Reverend Arthur Foote was a Unitarian minister who lived from 1911 to 1999. He came from a prestigious family. His father, Henry Wilder Foote, was a Unitarian minister in Boston. His uncle and his namesake was a well-known composer of classical music, part of what was called the Boston Six. I learned about Arthur Foote when I lived in the Midwest because, and I'm quoting here, from 1945 until his retirement in 1970, he was the minister of Unity Church Unitarian in St. Paul, Minnesota. As many of you know, I interned there. Arthur Foote and Unity were a near-perfect match. The church membership had a long-term ancestral tie with New England and had a series of distinguished ministers such as Frederick May Elliott and William Channing Gannett, who emphasized the importance of music and literature in religion. In this first essay in Arthur Foote's book, he describes the central theme that runs throughout as personal disarmament. Quoting Learned Hand, the famous judge, he writes, Not until you have the courage to meet yourself face to face, to make true account of what you find, to respect the sum account for itself and not for what it might bring to you. Deeply to believe that each of you is holy vessel, unique, and irreplaceable. Only then will you have taken the first steps along the path of wisdom. And as he closes this first essay, Reverend Foote urges wakefulness. He writes, remember that reading can be an escape from solitude and avoidance of thought. Use this book as a prod, but not as a crutch. If the opening quotation suffices to get you underway, put the book away. When you come to the end of a passage, don't read on. You have set this time aside for quiet renewal of the imagination and resolve, to go to work on the lifelong task of taking down our defenses. No one can take down those defenses for you. Maturity consists in no longer being able to be taken in by yourself. We trace our dreams of childhood on the canvas of our lives, and we spend the rest of class time coloring that in. It's beautiful. The art we make as children is ever and always beautiful, for we see ourselves reflected in the beauty of the world around us, in the gentle mirror of the sky. So, if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, make a tracing and then color it in. Let the child within your heart rise above the changing ocean tides, rise above the seasons of life with grace and with gratitude. It might seem hard, but it all gets easier over time, with practice. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.